The Federal Bureau of Investigation has registered about 23 FIRs looking at more than 5,000 possible offenders. What is their crime? The allegation is that they were not just exploiting children, abusing them sexually, but also filming the abuse and then putting it online using various social media handles to then create a much more traumatic experience for these children. Hello, everyone. I am Arun. This is what we are discussing in this broadcast, the dark web and how children are caught in it. Joining me to discuss this further are my two esteemed guests who are people who know the law as far as sexual abuse is concerned. But before I go to them, I just wanted to tell you viewers what the Central Bureau of Investigation case is. The CBI alleges that across the world, in various countries, there are users, about 36 from Pakistan, 35 from US and UK, countries like Azerbaijan, countries like Indonesia. There are users in all these countries who were taking in child sexual abuse material from Indian users or people who were creating this material, and they were then sharing links or they were sending them these films depending upon the kind of money that was being offered. The money trail is also being probed by CBI. They are in touch with social media platforms to try and figure out how deep this network is. And they're also hoping in the Interpol because they feel there is much more to this. More than 50 groups. We're talking about 5,000 offenders in this particular group. In this particular case, 100 countries. Those are the numbers that we're talking about. So the CBI feels that international cooperation is required. Already 77 locations have been raided from Tirupati all the way up to New Delhi, from Jalgaon in Maharashtra to parts of Bihar. So crossing the country, there are people who have been found to be abusing children and not just abusing them, but also putting it out, child pornography, putting it out, their pictures, their photographs, their videos online, and which is then being used. The question that I have for and Apani, she's an advocate and she's tracking this area very closely. First and foremost, if you can set out for us the law. I know POCSO has been amended. Government has tried to make the law stringent, but child pornography, especially on the cyber space, are we equipped as far as law is concerned?
Arunima, I'm not just tracking this, I'm appearing as a amicus curiae before the Supreme Court in a matter where in 2017, our Supreme Court passed a very path-breaking decision for protecting children, against child sexual abuse online. Just to set the background, in 2019, New York Times reported that in 1998, there were 3,000 child sexual abuse imagery online. And by 2018, it grew to 45 million. We are speaking about 5,000 the CBI has unearthed. Imagine the kind of size which is still hidden under the deep dark web, right? So 45 million. And there is a US-based organization, NEMEC, NICMEC for short, which is dealing with this issue and which helps us to combat child sexual abuse online. And in 2019, they are heard to say that machine learning or artificial intelligence is the only way forward to combat this issue. I told you that in 2017, the Supreme Court passed path-breaking decisions, and this was one of the decisions. In October of 2017, in February 2017, I was inducted as amicus, and in April 2017, the court appointed a government committee. It was part of it. Through consensus methodology, some proposals were evolved, and in October 2017, the Supreme Court made it an order of court in Prajwala versus Union of India. That's the short form we use, not the legal citation in that sense. But in October 2017, the Supreme Court said that artificial intelligence is the way forward, and the social media platforms and chat apps have to develop AI to be able to root out CSAM, child sexual abuse material in short, at the stage of upload itself. So only if you block the feed can we
Yeah.
really protect children?
Okay, okay. Sovereignty, come in on that. Is the situation now at a stage where you penalize only those who are abusing and who are putting out this material on social media platforms? Because that is the approach that the CBI is taking currently. But the investigating officers are also telling me that the problem is also the consumer. Uh, there is a market for it. There are people who are willing to pay for it, and therefore there are people who are willing to provide this kind of feed on the World Wide Web.
Arunima, what's going to happen is that you're always going to find consumers for all sorts of pornography. I mean, child pornography is, quite old now. There is recently all the snuff porn where there are live rapes and open live sexual torture or even torture of small children, where people are paying for it. It's available on the deep dark web. There are a lot of issues about it, a lot of cases about it. But initially, what you'll have to do is your under 67B of the Information Technology Act, you will have to stop these people from, you'll have to invoke these charges against them. You'll have to arrest them from uploading any of those videos, because what you're doing is you're depicting children in a manner which is against the law. That is one. What happened earlier was that 293 of the Indian Penal Code, which deals with obscenity, that is something which generally, it's just generic description of the obscenity law. Now, that itself
Right.
is not supposed to be sufficient. You have 67B, and then, of course, under the POCSO Act, you have section 13, 14, and 15. 13 use that you will not use children for this sexual material, etc., or sexual videos. Now, be that as it may, according to me, you need to still strengthen and tighten the law as far as, there has to be, POCSO itself may not be sufficient, but there has to be some specific legislation solely dealing with not only, as you rightly pointed out, the producers of this show, of this kind of a show, but even the consumers of the show, that even somebody who's considered to be consuming this, that is something which you will need to ensure that they need to be tackled and tackled as well. The reason why I'm telling you is, Arunima, because what has happened is that because India has sort of been a late entrant, some kind of a Johnny come lately as far as this particular aspect is concerned. In
Yes.
1989, there was already the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Child. Then there was in 2000 an optional protocol, which was
Right.
adopted by the United Nations General Assembly. Then in 2001, there was a Budapest Convention. So, you have had several international treaties and conventions dealing with this issue, and India could be a ratifying state with them. In almost all of them, it is, to the best of my knowledge. So still, India is lacking. In fact, one of the recent statistics pointed out that only 45 member countries of most of these treaties have a specific legislation in place to deal with sexual abuse. So this is as rampant as it can get. And unless and until India really either strengthens the law in terms of bringing out a very specific legislation dealing with the consumers as well, because unless and until there is demand for it, there won't be supply. And supply is
Right.
subject to demand. So, you can't stop demand. People are perverted. So what you'll have to do is you'll have to penalize them for their perversion. So this
Right.
is one
Ma'am,
of
you
the main
wanted
aspects
yeah.
that you'll have to look at.
Right. You wanted to come in, ma'am.
Yeah, because you've asked a very important question, and I wanted to just come in to give this fair warning that as far as child pornography is concerned, even browsing, so unlike regular porn where the customer is not penalized, when it comes to child sexual abuse content, the customer is liable already under 65 or 67B. And even browsing is an offense. Therefore, anybody who thinks they can
But
indulge,
if you give me a chance to interject, I actually wanted to ask you this. Yes, browsing is a crime as well. But you know what? Investigating officers were telling me the practical difficulty is that now even on common websites, you can go to a gaming portal, or you can go to a portal which is browsing, say a serial from any production house which you are unable to see on a Netflix or an Amazon Prime or a Hotstar. There are all of these other websites which stream it, and there as pop-ups, these keep coming up. Even if you click on that by mistake, you're still committing a crime, right?
Arunima, you're absolutely right. In fact, I've come across situations where children were playing games and child sexual abuse content pops up, because that is a way the pedophiles socially groom the children. So no, that is not what they mean by browsing. What they mean by browsing is you actively going and looking for child sexual abuse content. Because if we are going to take it to the extreme, the way you mentioned, then even the intent is done away with. The mens rea of wanting to look for child sexual abuse content is gone. Similarly, for instance, if you were to just put a Google search, so as part of my case, there were certain other proposals which came up, which is that a warning ad has to come up whenever somebody browses for child sexual abuse content. So that's a very important addition that we have done. And I, as a Micah's, had to keep checking every time before the case is listed to make sure that the warning ad was coming. So merely because I'm putting that as a search parameter doesn't mean I'm asking to see child sexual abuse content.
Right.
So
Right.
wanting news about it and wanting to actually see the content are different. And it is
All right.
only when you actively seek to look at content like that you will be made liable.
That's a very important clarification there. Then that the mens rea, the motive is very important for you to be penalized under the law of the land. Closing remarks. Then Swapnil Kothari, the way the Central Bureau of Investigation is now going after this issue, they've created a separate cell. They're planning to coordinate 100 countries is what we're talking about. They're speaking to social media giants. Do you think we've made a start, or is there lots to be done? With that, if you can give us your closing remarks.
Arunima, it's a very, very peripheral start because what happens is that people do comments on investigations, whatever investigating agency it may be. I don't want to comment on any specific agency, but they do not eventually end up with a charge sheet. They either delay it for reasons best known to them. They do not come out with clear-cut murders that take place in the city of Mumbai, and they somehow stall the investigation, or they're not allowed to come out with it for whatever reasons. But let me tell you that what I meant by demand, that demand needs to be penalized by a specific legislation. Browsing, if it's something pops up, I could say, I accidentally clicked on it, so that's the reason. So there was no actual criminal intention for me to browse through it. So I can have several lawyers, who'll be, or even myself, I can argue on these issues, even if I'm not a lawyer, and saying that it automatically popped up like an ad. So I don't know. I did not know what it was there, and I enjoyed it. I may not have enjoyed it. I could escape on that, but an actual demand. What I mean by is that when there is a demand, in the sense when there are people, see, today people are producing child pornographic tapes. Those are the ones that you need to catch. It's like catching peddlers. You catch peddlers and then for drugs, then you haul up the consumers. You can't just haul up the consumers and go up the peddlers. If that's one way of doing it, that's fine. But you need to attack, you need to catch the peddlers. Agar wo hi nahi bechenge, if they don't sell it because they're afraid of the law, of the implementation of the law. Look at Singapore, look at Dubai. Can you even think? Forget consumption. You can't even think of carrying something. You'll be finished there and then itself. Either you're behind bars for life, or you'll be executed. So unless and until you have some really stringent laws like that on peddling of child pornography, I would liken it to drugs itself. Anyway, I don't see any difference between the two. They are both as heinous and as harmful to the soul as much as possible. So this is something, and then you try to attack the consumers, because as a consumer, I could say, I clicked on something. Then there'd be hundreds of evidence to be laid that whether an actual browser can be clicked, whether something popped up, whether I actually searched for it. There could be 10 other things that I could argue. But on peddling, the very fact that you're making something, that itself should be stopped right there and then itself. Only then you'll be able to tackle this menace and eventually convict the people. Otherwise, this is a complete farce.
Yes, ma'am, you agree with that?
Absolutely. There cannot be two ways about it. We must have effective enforcement. The only point of disagreement I have is whenever there is action from the police, we do tend to brush it aside, saying it is not enough. Why don't we start looking at it as it's a great start? So I was part of, apart from the Supreme Court matter, there was an implementation stage post the order. I was also part of that in mid to end of 2019 and early 2020 before COVID. And that was for Maharashtra as advisor of Maharashtra Police, Cyber Police. And they, within a month, registered 400 plus FIRs against pedophilic groups. We are talking here about, and there will always be this defense that it is not I. But there will also be evidence which will clearly show what is right and what is not. So here are WhatsApp groups which are formed for sharing pedophilia and which have very suggestive names also. And so when I talk about 400 affairs, we are not talking about 400 people. It's
Hmm.
possibly 254 persons to a group, right? So these are
Right.
all steps which are in the right direction. And I'm very happy that CBI is doing it, because then it becomes a central agency and with a reach across India. And we need more and more like this. So instead of,
Okay.
I would just take this position that it's a great start. And we do certainly have a long way to go. As I pointed out in 2018, if it was 45 million, and considering that this is growing exponentially, the
Hmm.
possibility is we are in maybe double that number now. So we
All
need
right.
effective enforcement. We need it to be visibly seen that effective enforcement is happening. And there has to then be a deterrence, therefore, on the peddlers, as Swapnil rightly said, and also on consumers. Awareness that viewing, browsing, soliciting, creating are all very serious offenses which have a minimum and maximum punishment. All these things have to be made
Right.
aware, to the common man.
Right. Thank you so much for taking time out, both of you. Viewers, I hope you've understood why child pornography is a problem. What is the context in which the CBI investigation is on? What does the law really say? And how you can be penalized if you are a consumer of child pornography, if you are a maker of one of these films. Complete legal perspective, you can see this discussion once again and get a sense of where really this investigation is headed, why it is important. Thanks to the experts on the show once again. Thanks to you to viewers for watching.
Thank you, Arun.
Thank you.